That morning the house was too quiet. No voices, no footsteps, no laughter, just a single envelope on the kitchen table with my name written across it. Denise, I didn't need to open it to know what it meant. My family had left again. They'd done it before, walked away when things got hard, when I needed them most, but never like this. Not today. I opened the letter anyway. Let's see how you handle this without us. Something inside me went quiet too, not from shock but from finally understanding. I had spent a lifetime being the one who forgave, who waited, who tried to earn love that was never coming back. That morning Denise Langford stopped waiting. And somewhere far away, the people who left me behind had no idea their silence had just rewritten everything. I had imagined this morning differently, filled with laughter, the smell of coffee, and the familiar noise of people moving through the house. But when I opened my eyes, there was only silence. Not the soft kind, but the kind that feels heavy, like something has already gone wrong. The old clock ticked in the corner. No footsteps upstairs, no voices, just the sound of my own breathing. I called out once, then again nothing. Downstairs, the kitchen looked untouched, chairs aligned, counter spotless, sunlight cutting across the table, and right there in the middle lay a white envelope with my name written in Samantha's careful handwriting. Let's see how you handle this without us. No greeting, no apology, just a single cruel line. Front door creaked when I opened it. The driveway was empty. My father's car was gone, along with every suitcase that had been lined up the night before. On the small table near the window, a boarding pass gleamed under the light. Air France, Flight 221, departure 710A Paris. They had left. On the morning they were supposed to stand beside me. I stood still, pulse pounding, then exhaled slowly. Years of training had taught me what to do when everything fell apart. I folded the letter, tucked it into my pocket, and looked out across the lake. Fine, Sam, you wanted to see how I'd handle it. Watch. My phone buzzed. Paris looks better without you. I deleted it, and something in me quietly reset forever. Leaving the Air Force should have felt like a clean break, but it didn't. I traded uniforms for business suits, military hangars for the glass walls of Lead Martin. Discipline, precision, and logic ruled that place, things I understood better than most. But even there, order couldn't protect me from betrayal. 3 years ago, an internal investigation tore through our department. Someone had leaked a classified jet engine design. When my supervisor dropped a file on my desk, his voice carried more disappointment than anger. The signature on the leaked document was mine. I swore I hadn't done it, and I hadn't, but evidence doesn't care about your conscience. For 2 months I lived in a fog of meetings, interrogations, and the constant whisper that maybe I wasn't as clean as I thought. When the truth came out, it didn't bring peace. Samantha had used a scanned copy of my signature to submit the design to an international engineering contest. She said nothing while I was dragged through hell, and when it was finally over, my mother's only words were, "Sam's young Denise." She didn't mean harm. I was suspended for 3 months. The promotion I'd worked for gone. Samantha, meanwhile, was praised for her ambition. I stopped expecting fairness after that. During that forced silence, I met Michael. He asked me a question no one else ever had. If you weren't always proving yourself, what would you build? That question changed everything. I left aviation for renewable energy. I left defense for creation. And somewhere along the way, I started leaving my family behind too. A year later, Lockheed offered me my old job back. The letter was signed by the same man who'd once believed Samantha over me. I wrote one line in return. I no longer build for people who break what I fix. The morning of my wedding, while the final flowers were being arranged and the staff moved like clockwork, my phone buzzed. It was Jenna, my oldest friend. "Your sister's posting pictures from Paris. Champagne Eiffel Tower. She tagged your parents." I opened the app. There they were, my family, grinning in designer coats beneath a caption that read, "Some weddings are better watched from afar." The knot in my chest wasn't heartbreak anymore, it was clarity. They hadn't just forgotten me, they wanted to humiliate me. Michael knocked once before walking in. I was sitting by the mirror, phone still glowing in my hand. He studied my reflection. "Something wrong?" I smiled. "Steady, nothing we can't handle." Another message came through, this time directly from Samantha. "Don't embarrass yourself, you were never meant for these people." I turned the screen dark and looked at Michael, the same man she'd once called a basic engineer with no ambition. Had no idea who she was talking about. Within hours, his name would appear on live television as the CEO of Holden Renewables. He'd never told me not to test me but to protect me. "If people love you for your title," he once said, "they'll leave the moment you lose it." I'd laughed then, telling him, "Good thing we both build things that last." That morning, I tightened the waist of my wedding dress and stood tall. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't thinking about revenge, just balance. Samantha had started something long ago, and she thought she'd finished it. She couldn't have been more wrong. By 8 that morning, the mist still clung to the lake, a thin veil over the calm surface. The garden by Champlain had been transformed overnight, rows of lavender lining each aisle, the scent steadying my breath as I stood waiting behind the trellis. The music had already begun, soft and slow, floating through the air like a promise I wasn't sure anyone would keep. Guests began to arrive, their voices low and uncertain. I caught fragments of whispers cutting through the melody. Her family didn't even bother. No parents, not even a bridesmaid from her side. Each word was a chill against my spine, but I straightened, lifting my shoulders, refusing to flinch. I had been trained to hold ground in worse moments than this. Then Margaret Holden appeared at my side. Her grey-blue shawl moved with the wind, silver hair pinned neatly at her neck. She reached for my hand, warm and sure. "Then we unk greater than LL. Stand as your family today." 6 words, quiet but solid as stone. I met her eyes and saw in them the same kind of loss that had shaped me. The pain of someone who'd once stood alone. 2, she had buried a daughter in Afghanistan. Somehow that shared silence between us said more than comfort ever could. I turned toward the aisle, fingers brushing the edge of my veil. Michael's voice was low behind me, close enough for me to feel his breath. "There's one thing you should know. They're filming." Glanced back, he smiled gently. That calm, grounded kind of smile that never seemed shaken by anything. Our environmental partners asked to broadcast the wedding. "It'll air on Vermont today for a heartbeat." The world tilted. My pulse jumped, not from fear, but from the awareness of who might be watching from another continent. I nodded once, steadying myself when the first notes of the wedding march began. I stepped forward, no arm to guide me, no family waiting at the end of the path. Only Michael standing before the lake, framed by morning light, looking at me as though nothing else existed. A child somewhere in the audience whispered, "Where's her mom?" The words grazed my heart like a dull blade. I didn't slow. My heels pressed through the lavender petals scattered along the aisle, releasing their scent beneath each step. One petal cracked softly underfoot, like the sound of a door closing behind me forever. The sky above the lake was a clear, impossible blue, sunlight flickering across the water like 1,000 shards of glass. I stood across from Michael, the hem of my dress brushing the wooden platform, my hands trembling only slightly before finding stillness. Every face around us faded into a blur. There was only him and the truth sitting heavy in my chest. When I began to speak, my voice surprised me. It didn't shake. "To those who left, I forgive. To those who stayed, I stand with you. Because family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up." The silence that followed felt endless. Then a wave of applause broke it apart. Margaret's eyes glistened as she wiped her cheek, nodding at me like she understood every unspoken word behind those lines. I felt something crack open inside my ribs, pain unraveling into release. By evening, the world had already seen it. Vermont Today aired the ceremony live, and within hours the clip spread everywhere. They titled it "The Engineer Bride Who Redefined Family." Strangers I'd never met were quoting words I had only meant to say once. Meanwhile, hotel restaurant in Paris, Samantha and my parents watched the same broadcast. I wasn't there to see it, but later I'd hear the story. The anchor's voice carried across the screen. Local engineer Mary's renewable energy tycoon Michael Holden today in Vermont. Samantha froze, the stem of her wine glass slipping from her fingers. My mother's face drained of colour. My father muttered something I'd long stopped waiting to hear. Then came the sound of shattering glass, red wine spilling across Samantha's white dress, spreading like blood. She shouted that I had planned it, that I had humiliated them. But the truth was, I hadn't planned anything. They had written this ending themselves. A waiter, an American student working abroad, recorded the scene on his phone and uploaded it with a caption. The family who left the bride for Paris found out she married a millionaire. The video went viral. 2 worlds collided online. My calm vows against her outburst. Grace against bitterness. Later, as Michael and I swayed under the soft glow of the reception lights, my phone kept lighting up in my hand. Dozens of messages I didn't read. I knew one of them was hers. The screen flashed once before I locked it away. "Congratulations, enjoy it while it lasts." Michael looked down at me. "You okay?" I smiled, slow and real, better than I've ever been. That night, as the music drifted over the lake and laughter hummed through the air, I caught my reflection in the water, unfamiliar and free. Somewhere in a newsroom across the Atlantic, a journalist was already typing the headline for tomorrow. "Sister rivalry turns global, betrayal meets poetic justice." And there I was, quietly watching the ripples fade, whispering under my breath, "You wanted me to fall, Sam, but you forgot I was trained to land." By the next morning, the video had taken on a life of its own. It was everywhere, on TV, tech blogs, even lifestyle magazines. "The Engineer Bride Who Redefined Family" was the headline people couldn't stop sharing. I didn't post, didn't respond, didn't explain. The internet didn't need my version. It had already decided who I was. Comments filled every thread. "Who leaves their daughter on her wedding day? That family must be ashamed." Maybe they didn't see it, but in a hotel off Avenue Sant'Anna, I knew they did. Samantha's voice echoed through the suite as her phone hit the table. She did this to humiliate us. My father sat frozen, eyes locked on the TV where my wedding replayed beneath the banner. CEO Michael Holden Marys. Former Air Force engineer Denise Langford, my mother whispered. Michael Holden, isn't that the name on the company we're trying to sign with? Silence, then realization. The man they dismissed had just cost them their biggest contract. Samantha grabbed her phone. I'll fix this. She won't ignore me this time. Her message came minutes later. Denise, we made a mistake. Please call me. I read it while driving with Michael to our dinner. I turned the screen down. He smiled. You don't have to reply. That's the reply. I said. Within days the story snowballed. European outlets ran from Paris to shame. American papers called me the woman who stood alone. I stayed silent. The less I said, the more they listened. Samantha cancelled her trip, telling my parents, I'll make things right. A journalist texted me, your sister's flying home. Comment, no reunion. The next morning's headline made me laugh, the sister who refused reconciliation. Silence had finally learned how to speak. That night my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Every buzz felt like a knock on a door I'd already closed. By dawn there were 162 missed calls and 53 messages. My mother begged, your sister didn't mean to hurt you. My father pleaded, let's talk before this goes too far. And Samantha, short, sharp, you win. Happy now? I stared at the screen, then powered it off. It buzzed once, then died. Margaret appeared in the doorway with a cup of mint tea. Sometimes forgiveness is not picking up the phone, she said. I smiled faintly, then I'm halfway forgiven. Later, a journalist invited me to speak at the Women in Engineering conference in Boston. Michael thought I should go. Tell your story. It's not a story, I said. It's my life. I didn't know my family planned to attend. Samantha told my mother, if she wants peace, we'll give it to her in public. Online, my silence had become a symbol, a segment. Titled, The Calls She Didn't Take went viral. Comments flooded in. That silence spoke louder than any revenge. For once, my quiet wasn't weakness, it was power. That night, Michael asked, are you ready to see them again? I watched the snow fall over Boston's skyline. I'm ready to not feel anything. And that was the truth. Snow drifted outside the Boston Convention Center, grey light spilling through glass walls as hundreds of women filled the hall. The air buzzed with quiet anticipation, the kind that hums before a storm. I walked onto the stage in a plain grey suit. No ring, no diamonds, only the watch Michael had given me the day I left Lockheed Martin. The host's voice echoed. Our next speaker, Denise Langford, former Air Force engineer, environmental innovator and an inspiration to many of us. Applause rose, then faded as I looked toward the front row. My parents sat together, rigid and pale. Samantha sat beside them, eyes fixed on the floor, her face tight with something between shame and disbelief. I took a slow breath. 3 years ago I stood alone on my wedding day, not because I had no family but because I finally understood what family really means. The room went still. Sometimes losing people isn't tragedy, it's clarity. You don't need those who walk away to build your life. Sometimes losing them is how you win yourself back. Tears shimmered in the crowd. Samantha bowed her head as cameras caught her crying. My mother whispered, I'm sorry, you weren't wrong. Mom, you just didn't see me. Applause thundered. I walked away, free at last. I didn't answer a single email after the conference. The noise around my name eventually faded into something softer. Admiration instead of scandal, curiosity instead of pity. 3 months later I sat in my office in Napa Valley, sunlight pouring through the tall windows and reflecting off the solar panels outside. The hum of turbines filled the room, steady and calm, like a heartbeat that finally found its rhythm again. I picked up my pen and began to write, not to reach anyone, just to let something go. Sam, you didn't ruin me, you taught me what to outgrow. You showed me what love shouldn't feel like, and that's why I know how to love right now. I folded the letter fully and placed it in a small steel box beside another one, the note she had left for me on my wedding morning. One beginning, one ending. The door opened softly. Michael walked in carrying a copy of Forbes. He said it on my desk, smiling. Across the cover, bold letters read, Langford Women in STEM, turning pain into power. They quoted you again, he said. That line about losing people. I smiled back. Maybe someone needed to hear it. He hesitated before speaking again, his tone lighter. He'd taken a portion of his shares to establish a scholarship, the Langford Women Fund, dedicated to women in engineering, open even to those who simply shared my last name. Why mine? I asked. Because you turned it into something worth keeping alive, he said. The article spread through universities across the country. Journalists began calling me the woman who rebuilt her name. I didn't answer interviews, I didn't post about it. Most days I stayed late, sketching new layouts for the solar field, checking panels, tending to the small garden behind my office. I had left my past behind but not erased it. Forgetting would have meant losing part of the truth. I preferred to remember. Just without the pain. 3 years slipped by like a quiet tide, leaving behind no bitterness, only distance. The afternoon sun spilled golden light over Napa Valley, warm and heavy with the scent of ripened grapes and oak barrels. The air carried the hum of turbines from the solar fields, steady, familiar, alive. I spent the day walking alongside a group of young engineers, explaining how the panels turned with the sun. They listened closely, eyes bright with the kind of hope I used to carry. Outside the main building, sunlight glinted off the engraved wall, hundreds of names carved into steel, women who had received scholarships through the fund. In the centre, bolder than the rest, was one line, Langford Women. As evening settled, there was a knock on my office door. When I opened it, Samantha stood there. She looked smaller somehow, pale, tired, a shadow of the girl who once tried to stand taller by stepping on me. "Mom passed away last month," she said quietly. "Dad's sick. I had to see you." I didn't speak. I simply gestured for her to follow me down the glass corridor. The sunset stretched long across the floor, painting our reflections in gold. She stopped at the wall of names, her hand brushing against the letters of our family name. "Is that for forgiveness?" she asked. I smiled, soft but certain. "No, it's a reminder." The words hung in the air like the last light of day. Gentle, final, we stood there in silence, not enemies, not sisters reborn, just two people who finally understood how far apart the river had carried them. Before she turned to leave, Samantha looked back. "You really built something. You helped me learn how," I said. Her laugh was small, cracked but real. Then she walked away. When the door clicked shut, Margaret appeared behind me, her hand warm on my shoulder. "Do you feel lighter?" I looked toward the fading light. "No, just finished." That night, Michael and I sat on the porch, a bottle of white wine between us. The hills glowed faintly, the panels catching the last shimmer of sun. He asked if I ever missed them. I watched the light fade, smiled. "I don't miss people. I miss who I thought they were." The wind moved through the vines, quiet and kind. Revenge wasn't silence anymore, it was creation. I had built what they tried to break. The horizon dimmed, brushing a last stroke of gold across my hair before the valley fell into peace. If you enjoyed the story, hit like and subscribe for more story. Share this story. You are not alone. God bless you. Thanks for watching.